everyone, welcome back. As many of you know, it is Suicide Awareness Month, and obviously you would be subscribed to this channel for my mental health content, so of course I'm going to be doing a video about this topic today. We've come a very long way, especially in Western society, when it comes to acceptance of mental illness. This is something that people aren't so afraid to talk about within the public sphere or on their social media profiles. In fact, it probably gets talked about too often, the oversharing, but that could also be a coping mechanism, of course. So for today's discussion, I want to be talking about the pandemic and how that has affected our mental health. This pandemic has proven a lot of polarization, which is really unfortunate, but I guess you could say expected. Regardless of whether you're for this or against that, the pandemic has affected our mental health, it has affected our substance abuse, and it has affected the way that our young people cope. Seeing as we're all effectively going through the same thing, I thought it was a good topic to talk about. As I said in my intro, this is not about being pro or anti anything. This is about what we are collectively going through. It affects us in many different ways, and no matter your stance, how you feel is completely valid. I mean, it's not every day that as a society we go through emergency restrictions or we're dealing with the threat of a pathogen that does have dire consequences. Nevertheless, it is part of the human experience, and whether it is a virus or war or anything else, life is not going to be a bed of roses. At least we can all say that we're in this together, even if we have different thoughts and opinions about the situation. We are all going through this together, and many of us have been affected negatively by it, have our mental health affected by it. I can personally say I have. Not only me, but my family as well. As many of you know, in Auckland, New Zealand, we're in maximum restrictions. So not only are my family missing out on about 60% of our income right now, but my kids are really, really struggling. My daughter especially finds it really difficult to be away from her friends and her activities at school. And of course, she's not the only child to have been affected by this pandemic and the lockdowns. In fact, in the UK, studies show that children were 5 times more likely to die of suicide than COVID. Furthermore, during 2020, the proportion of mental health related emergency department visits among adolescents aged 12 to 17 years increased by 31% compared with that during 2019. And this is especially alarming in our young people. In fact, children as young as 5 in Australia have been calling the helpline, which is incredibly alarming. 44% of Victorian emergency interventions from December the 1st, 2020 to May 31st, 2021 were responding to a young person's immediate intent to suicide, while child emergencies triggered 31%. So why does it seem that children especially are being affected by this pandemic and furthermore government interventions? Human beings are very sociable creatures, even if we are introverts or extroverts. There is no denying that this pandemic has created a sense of fear for one, but then also during periods of isolation, it can be incredibly difficult. Children are not seeing their friends, they're not engaging in their everyday activities. And remembering back to your childhood, I mean, I don't know about you, but me, I used to play every day until sundown with my neighbors. Imagine what it would be like for a child to be completely cut off from society and community during this period. Not to mention the abuse that may be taking place within different households during lockdown. Among with alcohol abuse and other substance abuse issues increasing during these periods of lockdown, so have the numbers of abuse as well. And unfortunately, that of course affects young children. Kids helpline counselors understood that many households had become particularly tense during lockdown, where schools and other community connections may have previously played a role in supporting young people at risk of abuse. The extended lockdowns and homeschooling may have led to an increase in young people seeking support from us. I have read many anecdotes of children who have unfortunately done the deed during this pandemic. And one trend that I have picked up on is that these children are missing that quality time within their communities, hanging out with friends, being out of routine, being abused. My daughter, as I've mentioned, is struggling as well. For one of her class assignments, she had to write about a color that she feels on this particular day. So when I had come to review her work, I saw that she wrote that she felt gray. Today I feel gray because I'm bored. And the reason I'm bored is because I can't go out anywhere. The lockdowns make me feel stressed and tense. I just want to get out and be free like a butterfly. As a parent, this completely broke my heart because there is nothing that I can do about it. Of course, we are able to do activities like go for a walk, take the bikes out, etc. But the initial feeling of her not being able to go and socialize or live her childhood to its full potential is incredibly upsetting for me as a parent. You just feel powerless, you feel helpless, and on top of that, you can't help but to think back on your own childhood and remembering that you didn't have all this stuff to deal with. And then of course we have the substance abuse issues, which from June 2020 compared to the same period in 2019 had seen an 18% increase in overdoses in the United States. As of June 2020, 13% of Americans reported starting or increasing substance use as a way of coping with stress or emotions related to COVID-19. Overdoses have also spiked since the onset of the pandemic. A reporting system called ODMAP showed that the early months of the pandemic brought an 18% increase nationwide in overdoses compared with those in the same months in 2019. The trend has continued throughout 2020, according to the American Medical Association, which reported in December that more than 40 US states have seen increases in opioid-related mortality, along with ongoing concerns for those with substance use disorders. Along with the increase in substance abuse, we've also seen an increase in psychiatric admissions. Nearly 3 in 10 psychologists said that they are seeing more patients overall since the start of the pandemic. Of psychologists who provide treatment for anxiety disorders, nearly 3/4 reported an increase in demand for such treatment, and 60% of those providing treatment for depressive disorders saw an increase. Other treatment areas with significant increases in demand included trauma and stress-related disorders and sleep-wake disorders. I mean, I've always experienced insomnia, but I must say I'm probably not the first person to have issues with my sleep during the pandemic. So as I said, whether this has something to do with the government intervention, the lockdowns, or just the pandemic in general, the lines are certainly a bit blurred. We haven't yet seen the full impact on what this pandemic means for us. We haven't yet seen the full impact on our government interventions. This is all pretty unprecedented, especially on a wide scale over the whole globe. And of course, many governments have responded to the pandemic a little bit differently. Like Sweden, they took a bit of a hands-off approach compared to New Zealand especially. Our approach here is zero lockdown response, and while for me personally, I don't agree with that. I guess it just is what it is, and there's nothing much that I can do. However, in maybe 10 years' time, we will likely see the different kinds of impacts in different countries. Take for instance the use of masks, especially in young children. What kind of impact will this have on young children, especially when they can't see their caregivers' facial expressions, where obviously an infant is not going to see their caregiver with a mask on 24/7. However, with the likes of, say, in Australia, they had encouraged parents to social distance from their children. What kind of impact might that have later on in life? What kind of economic impacts will this have later on? How is this going to affect jobs later on? There is a link between suicide and job loss. What impacts will the V passports have on people, especially ethnic minorities who are more likely to not get the V? But I think more than anything, what impacts will the politics of this situation have on people, have on people's relationships with others? So many people I know have had falling outs with family members, with friends because of differing opinions. People often spend so much time on social media expressing their opinions, and as a result, this has created so much polarization. It's like people can't accept that another might have a different opinion. I believe this is an incredible test of our integrity when it comes to others. We often like to say that we're empathetic people, that we're accepting, that we are loving. But when it really comes to crunch time, in a situation like this, it's a great test. It's so important to remember that as humanity, we're all going through this together. I believe that the good majority of people want everyone else to be happy and healthy and to get through this as unscathed as possible. But it's really difficult when politics comes into it and it tears people apart. It sucks when you feel alone, cut off, or isolated in general without the added stress of things like lockdowns or the risk of actually catching COVID, or which treatment suits what. Is this treatment over here effective? Or the government says no, so probably not. And that is what I believe probably sucks the most peace out of people. I want to know how you're coping, how you have coped over the past 2 years. It's seriously been incredibly stressful for me. I've actually increased my intake of alcohol, which goes along the global trends. I'm just part of that statistic. However, on a positive note, it has really encouraged me to start eating better. It has encouraged me to grow my own garden. It's encouraged me to be more self-sustaining. I've had an incredible change of heart when it comes to how I want to move about the world. As a result, I wound up getting a beehive. I've also come back into touch with my spirituality again. Life provides certain challenges for us, and it's up to us how we respond to it. We can't change the world. We can, however, change how we respond to things, which in turn creates a butterfly effect. Imagine if we all did that. As of now, I'm taking every day as it comes. I don't know what the future looks like, but I'm just taking it day by day. That's all I feel that I really can do. Anyway, you guys, I hope that if you are struggling, that you know where to reach out to. If you are really struggling, I really do encourage you to look at who your local helpline is. And just remember that we are all in it together, even if we do think about the situation differently. We're all human. We all have feelings about what's going on, and they're all valid. Anyway, you guys, I hope you have a good day, night, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you guys all again for the next video. Bye!